My name's Ed Piscor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Jim, what weekend is it?
August 15.
We're heading to Canada in about 10, 12 hours maybe.
Taking this show international.
Yeah, man. We got to get the hell out of here pretty soon, man, so I could take a nap.
Yeah, hate traveling. Always flying out of Pittsburgh. There's always a layover somewhere, so it's almost always very early morning departure.
This town would be a perfect city, in my opinion, if we could just be more of a hub for our
Yes,
travels.
it would
man.
be nice.
I get very jealous of my LA friends who have LAX and can fly anywhere they want with just a simple plane ride.
I feel like LAX has its own drawbacks, but yes,
Good
you
point.
can definitely get places in a straight line.
Yeah, good point. When we head back, we're back home. We do have to touch down in Newark Airport, so at least we don't have that.
I was saying the same thing to my wife. I don't know when I'm coming home on Monday because we have the layover in Newark, and I've never flown out of there without a delay.
I have a move, so you're with me, man. So like I have the system hacked, you know, and basically because nobody comes to Pittsburgh, we'll land. There'll be a layover, and there will be several Pittsburgh flights. You just run to wherever gate that is, and if there are not people on board, if there are free seats, they will let you on.
Yeah.
So usually what happens is I don't wait for my plane.
That is a great tip, Ed.
It is a great tip. I got a million of them.
Well, I love it, and will use it the rest of my life. But we're burying the lead here, man.
Yes.
So we're going to Decaf this weekend. I am looking forward to it. I've never been to Halifax area. Seems beautiful. All the reports that we've gotten so far, I'm excited for the trip. And day one in a library, we're going to be doing live episode of Cartoonist Kayfabe in a library setting. I love it. I think that's awesome. Day two on Sunday will be a more conventional comic book show, is my understanding. And I'm looking forward to that. That's an area I have not been to, so there should be a lot of comic books and a lot of cartoonists that are new to me. Weather looks like it's going to be nice all weekend. I'm packing running equipment. I think it's going to be great. A lot of lobster in our near future, Ed.
I think so too. I've been thinking about what I'm going to eat there. That's pretty much what I've only been thinking about, to be honest. I better start coming up with some topics for our little discussion while we're there in the library and we have our captive audience. One question regarding international travel, like that I have for you, just for my own use, is converting money. Like, what's going to happen? Are you going to convert some loot ahead of time? There have been several times where I traveled to Canada, and the second I cross that border, and my green legal tender is meaningless, I do feel like a hobo or something, man. Like before I convert and have some actual shit that I could use, man. So I think I'm gonna convert ahead of time a little bit.
Yeah. I haven't decided what I'm doing yet. I was thinking we have a layover in Toronto. I might exchange some money there. I don't know if that's the best return on the exchange, but we're gonna have a couple hours there, so.
Yeah, it's a good thing too because like I think that's when we have to put up with all of our customs BS to like go on to the next leg of our tour. I don't know that it happens here in Pittsburgh.
No, I believe that's Toronto.
Oh, what time are you getting up, man?
Oh,
We have a 6:10 flight.
Yeah.
6:10 boarding.
I think I'm getting up about 3:30.
Wow.
Leave the house at 4. They say to get to the airport 3 hours before an international flight, right? I plan to get there like an hour and a half before the international flight.
Yeah. Oh, that's going to be tough, man.
Yeah, it's like I said, those are ungodly hours. 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. That's nighttime. That's not really morning.
So I tried to manipulate my sleep schedule in a way to make sure that I'll be pretty tuckered out by like 8 p.m. tonight. And basically what I did was I'm coming off the heels of pulling about a 28-hour straight work session, man. I don't understand what's wrong with my physiology in that when I go to sleep every night and I wake up, I get to sleep as much as I want to, and I never feel refreshed, except when I pull these ridiculous work sessions, man, where I pull an all-nighter, I go mangaka, pull an all-nighter, work for like 25, 30 hours at a clip or whatever. Those nights when I finally like have to submit to slumber, I sleep really soundly and wake up fresh as a daisy.
Does that get you back on a sleeping at night schedule? Because that could affect it. I don't know.
Circadian rhythm stuff.
Something like that.
It does get me back on a schedule like that for things like this. for these travels, because for whatever reason, everybody's a day walker, and these festivals have to abide by people who wake up in the morning, which is the antithesis of the Eddie P schedule. Now, when we get back, I'll probably continue waking up reasonably early for a few days until I put pencil to paper on page 4 of my next thing, and then all bets are off because I just let the process run its course. And if I then, pick up put the pen down and look at a clock, and it's like, okay, it's 5 a.m. There we are. We're right back to things, man. Just speaking about that comic and everything, I do want to thank. What I've been doing is doing like live inking sessions, because I own this thing, and I haven't signed any deals with any publishers yet, so they can't inflect their concerns upon me
Right.
about like, hey, don't be showing all of this stuff off. I'm being very strategic with that, just because in the past it's always been that way.
It's the weirdest. Whose strategy is, hey, we have this thing we're trying to sell. Don't show anybody.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and it's old logic. It's old logic that doesn't bear out anymore. I can point to many examples of people who gave up everything for free, but people still supported the project, still bought the books. It did way better than it would have in the opposite direction, where stores have to buy a thing on a diamond solicitation, elevator pitch paragraph, and nothing else.
Yes.
Fucking ridiculous. So I didn't. Well, let me just show this off. So I'm trying to come up with. I finished 3 pages of my new comic, and I'm still trying to come up with the process with like how I'm going to get the next 125 pages done. So with this 3rd page, let's see how it looks on the screen, because it might be a little washed out. Yeah, it looks a little bit washed out. I put together the panel borders on a sheet, and I hand lettered it on another sheet, because I'm always very sloppy, and I rewrite a bunch just in the lettering stage, so I don't want to do it on the board. And then I reduced it on my scanner printer, and busted out the Ticonderoga number 2 pencil, man, which, if you haven't drawn with one of those in a while, I recommend it, because there's something that fires in your mind where it's just like, feels like an extension of your hand. You've drawn with those far more than you've drawn with a Statler blue lead holder. Try it out, man. It feels sexy.
I'm with you 100%. I literally was just talking about this morning.
Really?
Yeah, you have these 10,000 hours plus, maybe you have 50,000 hours with that pencil in your hand. We just take it for granted, but when you put that pencil back in, it's like, oh yeah, where was this? This was my missing fingertip or whatever.
I'm back. I've been having such euphoria over the past couple of weeks since I'm putting this stuff together. But anyhow, like I printed it up. Just do the finest of look at that, dude. It's just bubble figures. You know what I mean? Like wireframes. And then I printed out on this blue. Does it work? Nah. You know what?
More reason for everybody to follow you and your Instagram.
Watch this. Oh, not that way. Maybe this way.
Oh, there you go. Wow, Ed, we need to use this effect a lot more.
Yeah, so there it is, man. And I printed it out, like those pencils that you see on Jimmy's thing right there, I printed out in a blue line on this big board, and just went in with ink. Maybe a little extra penciling, because if you notice, the very last panel is different, because I realized I didn't abide by. I broke the 180-degree rule in a terrible fashion, especially since the girl is wearing glasses, and in your thing, like, the guy is wearing glasses too. So it's like, what, he just morphed into this girl? Not a good look. But when I ink my comics, I need complete silence while I'm doing the penciling part. It's just all thinking. I can't even really listen to music.
Right.
Nothing with lyrics. But I've been inking in live streams here on the YouTube, and people have been joining, upwards of 200 people sometimes. And there's this thing that I discovered, kind of randomly. There's this thing called a super chat that's possible in your live streams, where people, just out of the good kindness of their heart, they sort of donate money to the cause, you know, like I'm not exactly sure what they get out of it, but they get something out of it. So if you don't mind, I'd like to give a shout out
Please.
to some of the super chat people who pledge money to the Kayfabe channel, help support the channel, man. We're going to be able to upgrade equipment and get better get better mics, get better cameras, better lighting,
Better writers.
create more opportunity, like maybe take a trip here or there. It's all going back to the channel. So I want to thank Trans, Massive Panda, C. Kim, Gustavo Gamo, John Weaver, Justin Till, and Chris from Comic Tropes for giving us money in the super chat feature that I had no idea even existed until I just started seeing these little dollar signs basically come up. But what I do is when it's ink time, I'll set up the iPods to record the thing, and on a separate computer, I'm just like kind of watching the chat. It's been pretty cool, you know. Like the Kayfabe Brain Trust, we are on record for espousing how much it's a symbiotic relationship, and with those live streams, it's even more so. There's very few dummies who come rocking in these rooms, man. But we are on the trek for 10,000 subscribers. And one of the things that I was thinking about now this might go nowhere actually, but just in those live streams, I was talking with the Kayfabers and trying to figure out like at 10K, like what happens, what could be possible. One of the things that I thought of was maybe we have a scheduled live stream where we can sit in there and have it scheduled so that people know it's coming, because when I do my inking sessions,
Right.
very random, and very often, if you're not a nocturnal creature, you're not going to see these live streams. But we'll choose an evening when that's the best shot for there to be the most people at home, and maybe we sit in front of the cam for two hours or so, 3 hours, maybe, like however long it takes, and just like rap back and forth. Maybe that's the thing that we do every 10,000. You know, we'll talk about it. I don't want to put you on the spot or anything like that.
And in terms of the inking and the live streaming, that's something I plan to do as well.
Great.
I'm a couple of weeks behind on the story that I'm working on, behind your schedule. So that'll be coming up too. I'm very excited by it. It's been cool to see the response to yours, and I'm eager to partake in it as well. And I'll have I'll have the day shift probably. So
I was just thinking
we'll
that.
be able to accommodate whatever people's viewing habits are. Hopefully we'll be able to provide for day or night.
Yeah, I was totally just thinking that, man. You run like the 9 to 5
Yes.
gamut, man. So you'll be on the daywalker schedule, and I'll be hanging out with the nocturnal creatures.
I have a lot of thoughts on your pages. One of them is something I read this week.
Yes.
So I read this Dave Gibbons on lettering interview book.
We received that in the mail.
Yeah,
P.O. Box
thanks to AJ Frost. Sorry, P.O. Box.
3071, Munhall, Pennsylvania 15120, man.
So, you recognize this cover as homage to Watchmen. Dave Gibbons, obviously the artist of Watchmen, letterer of Watchmen. He worked as a letterer before he was drawing comics. So this kind of traces like his history as a letterer, and he gets into the details of Watchmen and that process, and it's really similar to what you're outlining, Ed. And I think like he talks about the density of Watchmen and how like by lettering before he would ink, by being the artist and also the letterer, he was able to basically use every square inch efficiently in those panels. And I see that in the work that you're doing over there. So this was a pretty fun read. He also designed all of the Watchmen trade stuff, which I didn't know, and makes perfect sense because one of the things that I always thought of with Watchmen is like it looked different than everything else. From covers on, as soon as I saw it, it was like, what is this? This is not Superman or Spider-Man or whatever I was reading. When I started to engage with it, it was like, this is foreign. This is something different. And I'm sure it comes out of Dave Gibbons being the designer for all of that. And he said he's designed all the editions that have been published of Watchmen, which I think is a pretty cool little piece of it. And you see it, we take for granted lettering, right? If it works good. If it doesn't, that's when you usually notice it. But there's more to it than that. It is this overall aesthetic experience that you're seeing at a quick glance or whatever. So pretty cool to see the way you're approaching the lettering in that. And definitely some similarities to ideas that Dave Gibbons talks about in this book.
I like how there is no right way to do any of this. That's sort of the freedom of this, and that's sort of where I'm at right now and just trying to figure out like
Yes.
what my system is going to be for this project. It's going to be different than the X-Men. There are different concerns and there are different drawing sticking points that I'm working on, trying to educate myself and get better at. So I need a different approach. But I remember being sort of chastised in a humorous way, just in conversations at festivals, by cartoonists that I like and respect, when they find out that I put lettering down sort of first, because they would point to Floyd Gottfredson opposite, and he was doing the entire strip himself.
Mickey Mouse.
Yeah. Opposite approach. Like, not only would he draw the strip, but he would kind of draw everything and then put the lettering in. But it seemed to me that was highly inefficient. I think it's a trope of QBs to put the lettering down initially, because Joe Kubert would always talk about, like, yeah, it's less area that needs drawing.
Dave Gibbons references that too. It is very practical. I wonder about editing. This is something I'm thinking about on my next comic, which I'm looking at a lot of manga as influence on this next story that I'm working on, and I'm trying to figure out like how I want to manage lettering. Because in Street Angels, I would do it differently all the time. Like, I had stories where the lettering was drawn separately, not part of the original art. And I didn't like that. I went back to, I want the lettering on the page. It's part of the composition. I need to see it to really kind of like figure it out. But it allows certain things. Like, if I am serializing some of this on a phone, not having the lettering on the original art means that I can crop and really have some freedom to kind of format it differently for different devices. So there's a lot that goes into weighing these options. And like you say, I don't think there's one answer for it. At least I haven't found that one answer. And you make all these decisions in the beginning, and I want to get to the boards and start drawing, but it's like there are walk steps before you get to that running part.
Yeah, and I am in the drawing phase, and I still haven't nailed down the process. The reason you need a system is because there are 125 more pages to go. If you could just shave off a little bit of time here and there with many different little bits of back-end stuff that readers don't see, the churn rate is a little bit quicker.
There's also stylistic reasons for figuring out that system. We just went through some of 8-Ball and Like a Velvet Glove last week, and I can remember reading interviews with Dan Clowes where he talks about, like, he got much better as an artist it was like 3 years, I think, of drawing that, but you're bound by those first chapters because you want it to all look like a whole. So figuring out that system early on means the beginning pages and the end pages do fit together, especially with graphic novels. That is a challenge. You certainly develop over drawing 100+ pages. As much as you can figure out in that beginning is going to serve you well long term, but it is definitely a discovery. Like a sculptor or something chiseling away at that form underneath. It's like, there's some false starts and things you learn along the way, and the sooner you can learn them, the better off you are.
It's a perfect way to put it, man. There was those master classes when we started these weeklies. I was talking about like the Sorkin one, the Mamet one. Both of those guys referenced that old Michelangelo statement of like, well, I just look at a big block of marble and I cut everything away that's not
Right.
David.
It sounds good.
It does, and Mamet really, like, he's cool because he breaks kayfabe and he's like, yeah, it sounds profound, but wait, when you get to the heart of the matter, you really see that it's really Michelangelo just saying, buzz the fuck off. Where I'm at now with my comic, I got to tell you, it's like I'm in comics for the first time, because even though Hip Hop Family Tree, X-Men, those are very on rails. I have to abide by canon. I have to abide by history. Mm-hmm. So there's far less freedom to do what I want to when I'm dealing with those kinds of subject matters. Now I'm at this stage where we've taken that screenwriting course, and I think I'm done with it. There's one more week to go, but I skipped yesterday in favor of pulling my all-nighter, and I'm probably not going to go back to the other one, to the final one, because I've created my arrangement that makes me happy with where this first issue is, and I'm just all about putting labor hours into my final story. And where we left off, we were putting together note cards to sort of denote what's going to happen on each page, essentially. And that could be as much as 4 sentences, maybe. So I would have these like, I know where everything is going to go in issue 1, but then that's macro. And now just like facing like every single page, it really is that chiseling moment, because now I'm making these decisions that are going to solidify my characters, that are going to solidify the universe that I'm creating here, and that frankly is going to solidify the actual story. And it's this like really fun logic puzzle that I've been itching to get back to for a very long time. It's been 7 years of me making these other books that are sort of with outside forces inflecting themselves upon me as a creative. And I don't have that anymore. And I got to tell you, I'm in a completely euphoric state while putting this comic together. I don't want to stop.
I think it shows in the art. We've been talking about this story for a while, long before the screenwriting class, and then watching, iterations go through that process. You get very, can't see the forest for the trees because you're so close and you're sort of seeing these drafts come out. When you started posting pages, I was like, oh yeah, you almost, one, I can't picture what you're going to draw,
Yeah.
or whatever I picture is going to be different and biased by my own point of view. So like seeing those pages emerge, it's like, oh, that's 75% of the storytelling is art, or maybe more than that. And it's a totally different experience once you actually start seeing those images, which I think are amazing, by the way. And that the fun, that euphoria you're describing, I think is visible in those pages. Like it really looks like it's coming through in the drawing. I did tell everybody to email you this week to tell you to come to class next week, but to send in those pages as the piece that we would all read and look at, because I think it'd be interesting to hear non-comics readers' reactions to that kind of thing. And we talked a little bit in class about about this topic and about how much this changes once you, in the case of Emily, our teacher, once actors are actually there, once settings there, lighting, and it's so collaborative, and it is a very different, obviously a very different thing looking at a script versus watching a television program. And I think the same thing is visible in the pages.
So I did skip out, but you went, man. Did you get any good takeaways? Because sort of where you were at when we started, you had the germ of an idea. Right. You didn't have anything but like some gray matter attached to what you're going to be working on for maybe a year or something, man. So where are you at right now?
I have started doing very rough sketches. I'm working on character designs. Like I said, a couple of weeks behind schedule of where you're at. I remember you were posting some designs on your accounts a few weeks ago. So that's kind of the stage I'm at. From a storytelling standpoint, I have been going through the drafts. I'm very happy with where it's at. I got some good notes last night, and I feel like implement those notes, and I'm ready to draw. So I'm pretty psyched. I would guess what I have outlined is about 60 pages. I have not broken it down page by page because some of that is going to happen in the drawing. It's more of scene by scene, but I'm guessing it's about that big of a chunk. So certainly enough to keep me busy for quite some time. But in terms of like character development, that's been the great piece of doing this each week, is fleshing out these characters. And it's amazing how you get to a point where it's like maybe this character that was a background character is the best character in the story now. Which ideally, you want all those characters to have that kind of agency. But working on deadline, I would say, if I were going to give advice to somebody who's making comics and watching this, it's that deadline. Like having to make pages each week, and be accountable for that, it moves you. It makes me work faster than if I'm working on my own, and it's like, well, I have 1,000 things on my to-do list. I'll work on this idea more next week or whatever, tomorrow or later. Having a deadline that you're responsible for is really a good way to move that process forward.
You could spin wheels forever and get nothing done.
Yes.
And just have it all be headspace.
One piece that came up last night that I think I will think about moving forward is the idea of where action occurs in your stories and what Emily calls cutting on action. So, for example, if it were this shot of us, right? Whenever you reach for that drink, you would cut to then the close-up of you with the drink. If we were talking and somebody's going to interrupt us at the door, they don't interrupt us once we've completed our sentence and it's the perfect time. They interrupt us in the middle of the sentence. And when you say it out loud, it seems obvious. But when you're writing, like we're very sort of like, okay, this is my idea, I want to get it down or whatever. But having those kinds of interruptions and things butting against each other, it brings a sense of life. and sort of an abstract timing to the process. So I think that's interesting to keep in mind, especially like cutting scenes and page turns, even how panels break down. So I think that's something I'll continue to think about moving forward.
One of the big takeaways that I got from the class period is that I am now, I'm happy to admit, I am now in the state, 16 years in the game, of conscious incompetence. I know what I don't know for the most part now. And that's what this class did for me. I've been on day one, when we go through the room and it's like, why are you here? The thing that I said was that I've been operating through intuition my entire life.
Yes.
As humans, we are in a room with tens of thousands of comics. Pattern recognition is a part of the human imagination. And just like, so it's like, I've read a million comics, and I sort of know what I like and what I don't, but I don't know why. So to break things down in a more scientific, rigid manner, to unpack some of the formula that goes into story. I've read the Joseph Campbell books, all of that, like in the past, but like in this very scientific way as applied to TV, it's things that we could use for our own use here in comics. But spending a lot of time and just going through it with you, it just creates an opportunity where discussions can be had outside of that classroom too. So it's more full time for me, and it really does affect me just when I watch things on TV, period. And I've never been one to be able to veg out by consuming story content, books, TV, film. I'm always reading that stuff as a student or like watching that stuff
Right.
as a student. And there was nothing more apparent than this past week. I saw Steven Spielberg's Duel movie, like his first feature
Yes.
film, which was a made-for-TV movie. And I first heard of it from Stephen King's Danse Macabre, when he was citing influences from film, stuff that inspired him to do the work that he did. But I've been wanting to see that movie for a long time. And the Angry Video Game Nerd YouTube, they did like a review, and I'm like, okay, that just put it in my mind. Let me grab this flick. Let me watch it. And with the story stuff that we've been unpacking in class, denoting the acts in a story, the master classes, Mamet, Sorkin, they always say, like, Aaron Sorkin is like, I need a character to want something really bad and to have obstacles in their way to make it harder for them to accomplish that. That is the hero's journey. Campbell, Young, Mamet has a bunch of that. And the Spielberg's Duel is like the most simplified thing that you could look at and sort of like unpack in those terms. It's a very simple story. You know what it is? It's Mad Max Fury Road.
Yes.
But more lo-fi.
Much more lo-fi.
But another thing that made me think about that flick in relation to some of the stuff that we talked about here in Wizard episodes and shit is when you're given a job and like sometimes people like really excel at that, or like they take it with the utmost seriousness and then create a gem, like one could say that that's even like the Frank Miller Daredevil thing or something. Sure. Where it's like you
absolutely,
and this movie is that. It's very there's a lot of Hitchcockian stuff in it. You also can see probably where he expanded upon some ideas from Duel when he made Jaws.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And so like what the story is, basically, here's the inciting incident. There's a truck in front of a guy's car, and he just simply wants to get around the dude. He does, but that truck driver is fucking pissed off. And there it is, man. The duel begins.
It's very contemporary when you frame it that way.
It is.
That movie could come out now.
I got ran off the road by a truck maybe 3 months ago. And it was actually a similar thing, man. Can I actually tell you the story? And then I'm gonna be as objective about myself as possible,
Okay.
and you tell me if I'm an asshole. Big giant truck. It was one of those like ones that you put the tree trunks in that chops them up. It was parked in the middle of the road, and the guy was just like talking with somebody in this like garage. So I just pulled around the side, and I stopped for a minute, and he was just jabbering for a while, and then I just pulled around the side off the shoulder. I went off the shoulder, and went in front of him. I drove like 2 miles an hour, like real slow, and then I started going, and then I looked behind me because I heard a bam, bam, and that truck was just flying, and they ran me off the side of the road, and both guys, there's a guy riding shotgun and the driver, fuck you, blah, 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 honking. And then, like, they were hanging out of their car, like, when they were driving by. And I'm like, they want to kick my ass. But I really don't think I did anything wrong. How does that sound? That's about as objective as I could be.
Yeah,
Do you think I did wrong?
That sounds all right. If they're parked there and you go around them, I think that's no harm, no foul. I've seen people recently in grocery store parking lots screaming profanities at each other, leaving the parking lot, and it's like, you guys are going 7 miles an hour. Like, even if someone cut off someone here, like, how angry are we that we're that quick to fly off the handle? But I would say that's probably more about them than you.
I was walking to I parked at the grocery store last week, and I was walking in, and there was a guy, a rotund Steeler fan, in his handicapped space, listening to the radio or something, and another person was pulling into the closest handicap spot, and when they cut it hard and they hit the curb. And as I'm walking by, it's pretty hot out, so everybody has their windows down and shit. And the rotund Steeler fan guy is like, "Good job, asshole!" Like shot him like 2 spaces over to the other handy-capable driver. What do you think family functions are like at that guy's house?
Yeah, that's a fun Thanksgiving dinner, I'm sure.
Dude, did you see that? Did you see the Dolemite trailer?
I did, and I am so excited for that.
Eddie Murphy plays Rudy Ray Moore in Dolemite Is My Name. It's going to be a Netflix flick.
That whole cast looks amazing. I could not be more excited. That's probably the most thing I'm looking forward to the most now that I've seen the trailer. Dolemite, obviously influential. Like, whenever I was doing Aphrodisiac, I was looking at all kinds of blaxploitation movies from that time period, and Dolemite, they're sort of a Mount Rushmore of these movies, and Dolemite is certainly on that.
On the Mount Rushmore, would you put Shaft and Superfly on there? Because to me, those are mainstream flicks.
That's interesting. I feel like Shaft, I know it's not the beginning of those movies, but it's sort of the poster child breakthrough, what made that viable, or what, I don't know, everybody thinks of. So I feel like that's got to be included. Superfly feels like a classic. Mac is one of the great movies, and I think like Coffee to me is just flat, like no qualification, one of the great action movies.
Oh, that goes on
any genre.
That's the thing too.
Anywhere.
Like I never heard,
which is too many heads, I think. But
like who came up with the term blaxploitation? Because I never even heard that term until the aughts, the 2000s.
Oh,
man, I didn't know. Like I grew up. I cut my teeth on Dolemite flicks, man. Like, I worked at a really cool video store, but before that was the video shop that we frequented. And sometimes there would be a video in there that had the black clamshell case that wasn't some sort of like licensed, bought from a distributor kind of videotape. And to me, that shit was just weird action movies. And Dolemite was my favorite growing up. It gets on my radar in like 92, whenever Dr. Dre's The Chronic comes out, and people like Rudy Ray Moore is sampled maybe 5-6 times on that one record, and it's like, well, who is that? And it only took one homeboy's dad to be like, now I can't show you the record sleeve because your mom would get real mad, but I could play the record, man. And then like hear all the reference stuff, man, and went out, got the flick. Windows 1995 era, there used to be a trope of like you could get a desktop theme where you download this package and you could put it in like a folder. And I had a Dolemite desktop theme. Wow. I forget what the cursor was, man. Maybe it was like a cool hat or a pimp cane or something. But I do remember when you delete the recycling bin, you empty the recycling bin, Dolemite's voice would come in and say, "There's nothing in my trunk, man." And that
That's
was
good.
And that was Windows 95 era. So there would be just systematic and routine crashes that would occur sometimes, and my folks, they would leave the computer on. So I do remember one time when my mom's dear parents, my grandma and dad were sitting at the crib, and like my mom is so kind of like mousy and shy. Like she was a smoker, but like until the day my grandparents died, they didn't know that she smoked, And here comes a crash, man. And whenever the system would crash, Dolemite would say, "You know, business barred, insecure, jock jawed motherfucker," and the speakers were on, and like that just like squirts out of the computer when my dear old grandparents are there, and embarrasses my mom. She never said swear words in front of them and shit.
They remind me of a lot of the indie comics that I'm a big fan of. Those movies ran the spectrum from very polished and kind of more studio produced movies to very independent, and visionary, like one person really driving them. Dolemite being an example of that, where it just is, you can see it. It's this guy's idea and his writing and character and everything on display. And it feels like those comics that I respond to, where it really is like one creative vision.
Yeah, it's wrong in all the right places in that it lacks that polish, and I could see that being inspiring to a person who wants to go into that field. When you could see some of the rough edges, man, like that's very meaningful to me, man. But listen, gun to your head, if you have to choose Dolemite 1 or 2, which one do you go for?
It's the second one, right? I think everybody feels that way.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, the second one, Dolemite 2, The Human Tornado. Run out and check it out. And one thing that kind of stinks in a way.
One of the sequels that's better than the original. Empire Strikes Back, Godfather 2, and Human Tornado.
Yeah. If you get it now, like on the current iteration DVD and stuff, it has like 10 extra minutes of shit that feels so wrong to me still. Like it's like I need the old VHS cut. I think I have the tape, but I just need a VCR or something. But like there's this extra like 10 minutes. I'm just like, I don't want that in there. It feels wrong. And also classic early appearance of Winston Zedmore himself, man. Ernie Hudson is in Dolemite 2, The Human Tornado. And it's a great part. He has a great scene. Like you could probably see it was on his sizzle reel whenever he got the Ghostbusters gig, because his dear brother, his dearly departed brother, just got shot. And he's holding him in his hands. And he's crying over top of his dead brother. And he goes, "He's just playing." And then when he looks this way and says he's just playing a second time, "He's just playing," he spits, and it's just this dribble trail, especially in high def on DVD. You see this like flotsam and jetsam just like kind of hanging from his face, man, and like boogers and shit. It's a very vulnerable moment, worthy of, I would dare say, an Academy Award.
It sounds like it. The way you describe it, for sure. Talking about movies.
Yes.
I watched one this week, Under the Silver Lake.
Never heard of it.
It is, let me get the guy's name. David Robert Mitchell was the director. He directed It Follows, a horror movie from a couple years ago. Yeah, I was a fan of that. So the reason I watched this is our intern, Nick, recommended it because he said it reminded him of Dan Clow's Like a Velvet Glove Cast in Iron. I would add to that David Boring. There's a lot of David Boring similarities in it. Andrew Garfield, one of the Spider-Men, is in it. Topher Grace, one of the Spider-Man characters, is in it. But it's set in L.A. in the Silver Lake neighborhood, and it's so Dan Clowes-esque. Like he had to be referencing David Boring and Velvet Glove. He had to be. It's not acknowledged anywhere, but it's this character that's going through looking for puzzles. There's a lot of like old media and new media for that matter, but things like records, comic books, magazines, and zines. There's a character who makes zines that this main character tracks down because he's trying to decode this conspiracy theory. That's kind of what the movie is about. And it was fine. It was fun to watch as a Dan Clowes fan because there's so many similarities to these stories. But it made me think about how, imagine a Dan Clowes story if you take away that art. It's much less, it's my interest in it is much less, or my enjoyment of it is much less. And I think that's the same as like drawing comics. Like seeing your artwork on your story changes the way I see the story.
Right.
Removing Dan Clowes' artwork from the Dan Clowes story, even though it's still the skeleton of the story, it's just a totally different experience. It's such a big part of that. you know, and it's almost style or something at that point. You know, like what am I reacting to? Drawings that I liked? It's such a weird thing to like be able to isolate elements of that style and really kind of look at them through a new lens.
I on my travels, I like to listen to audiobooks, like especially plane rides. And Klaus, for David Boring specifically, cites Nabokov as being like the influence there. So I wonder if it's like the Nabokov influence that's inflected upon both. Like now I haven't seen this movie, I'm gonna check it out. So I wonder if it was David Boring they were pulling from, or if this is like a standard trope of Nabokov. Like I have an iPod full of his audiobooks, and I've listened to a couple. This one, man, I forget the title of this one, but it fits into Wilson perfectly. It's like this guy who's totally ignorant. He's being cuckolded and doesn't even know it by his wife, and it ends actually, I think, in he performs some kind of massacre or some sort of murder. So like that could be adapted to modern day or whatever. But I wonder if it's like the Nabokov strokes.
It's certainly possible, but there are just very specific overlapping
That's awesome.
things. Like the main character early on is with a woman in bed, and they're looking at like his pile of old media, and it includes like old pornography that he, you know, cherishes, and it's really similar to David Boring whenever it's like, this is my scrapbook of the idealized woman or whatever, you know, and his girlfriend's or his friend is looking at that and excited to look at that. So like there are some very specific parallels.
That's super cool, man. One of the things I was listening to while doing some inking this past week at San Diego Comic Con this past year, 2019, on the yacht. I've done the yacht interview a time or two. It's real fly, man. But on the yacht, Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld were sitting there. They were talking about, you know, damn near the 30th anniversary of Image is coming up not too far away. Issue number 300 of Spawn, which, how doesn't that trip you out a little bit? Like when you were a kid buying X-Men like 244, didn't it feel like that fucking comic was going on for a million years before you were around? And it's like we're old enough for there to be an issue 300 of something that not only were we alive, but like super aware. Like, you know, I was double digits of age, certainly. That's a little trippy to me. Anyhow, the one of the gifts that I think McFarlane has for his own purposes, and he shares the stuff in a lot of interviews. If you just take the time to listen, man, he is really good. Now, in order to do anything, you need to be able to get out of bed and have some purpose, and then make the thing. If we're talking creative, you know, and it's not a bad idea to have some positive thinking. And if you are talented enough, delusion can actually go away. Like, you don't even have to have the idea of like delusion in your mind, because it's like you're going to see it through. And he's always been good at that in almost every interview he's given. And for, I would say, our own purposes now, he gave a jewel in the interview that I think is worth keeping in mind. And maybe, you know, some of our friends are makers and they watch the show, so this might be cool to them too, man. Now, with this next comic, I've developed a world, and I can only make this story. It's a piece of the world, and I want to do more. At least right at this very minute, I want to keep exploring this world and like showing different facets. And I spend all this time kind of like figuring it all out. Like, I really want to show it to you, but the only way that I will do that, because I make my living from comics, is I'm gonna have to when I put this out, it's gonna have to return a certain number in my head in terms of like finances that justifies me being able to spend another year on it. And it doesn't matter how that money comes in by way of the project. One avenue, one vector for that could be like the Hollywood option. You know, you make a little Hollywood money, man. Get the option money. That could be upwards of 6-figure check sometimes. Sure. You know, so I am open to that. I'm not Alan Moore. I am open to that. And in that conversation, McFarlane was talking about, like, look at the Diamond Top 100. Most of those books, Marvel and DC, those are tied up. Marvel Studios, whoever the fuck, Time Warner, whoever messes with the DC shit, those are tied up. So all of those, man, are accounted for when it comes to Hollywood stuff. The other big books, your sagas, Paper Girls just is going to go to Amazon Prime. Obviously, Walking Dead is accounted for. Basically, all the books in the top 100 are accounted for when it comes to that part of the possible business that we could do with intellectual properties that we are creating. So Mcfarlane is like, if you make it a goal to make your book a top 200 book, you're probably going to have a lot of opportunity to those ends. Not a bad way to think about it, man, because in this climate, in this culture of comics, it ain't that hard to crack that 200 space, man. So that was a nice gem that I took from that interview that I'm going to sort of keep in mind. Now, obviously, you can't. That's out of your control. Like all that you can do is make the best comic that you can. But there are other things, publicity, maybe like figuring some of that shit out. One of the things I want to do, I now have a complete, with this 3 pages, I now have a complete scene. It's the prelude to my comic. I'm going to do a little reading. I'm going to splice together imagery and put out maybe a 2-minute video in a new playlist on our channel, and then it'll accumulate like as I continue to like build that, and then maybe there'll be a singular video for issue 1 that all the work is done for you. I'm reading the motherfucker to you, and all you got to do is watch a thing on the screen. How is that going to hurt?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I'm with you 100%. Whenever you talk about Todd McFarlane and sort of, I don't want to say delusional, but I'm reminded of athletes. You know, like they've done so much research on athletes and brain activity and white brain cells, gray matter, white matter, all these different things that affect your perspective and how you view an event. Athletes have that. You know, like top level athletes have this ability to get beaten on a play and not affect their confidence at all. You know, like still believe like I'm the best player ever and I'm going to shut this guy down this time. You know, it'll be different this time, or don't even think different. It's like play in front of us. I'm the best. This is happening. And I always think of like Mcfarlane, you know, as a baseball player, right? Like he may have a little bit more of that than your average cartoonist. I think whatever that makeup is.
I think all entrepreneurs have to have that because you have to take shots. It's sports analogy. It's the Wayne Gretzky go where the puck is going to, not where it's been. And in order to do that, it's a risky proposition. You have nothing to point to let you know that it's going to be a successful thing. At large in media or whatever, when you're learning about somebody, you're seeing their successes. Their successes are there and demonstrable, but there's a lot of failed attempts and false starts that led up to the massive success. And you just can't be a bitch, basically. And you got to just keep rocking.
Yes.
No matter what happens, man.
So, Ed, once we get back from Canada, it won't be long before you're on the road again to Japan.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I found a spot for you to look up in Tokyo.
Yeah?
Ribera Steakhouse. Have you heard of this place?
No.
This is a wrestler-friendly steakhouse that goes back to the 70s.
That's
so
dope.
if you Google it, you'll find articles on it and stuff, and you'll see like guys from Brody and Terry Funk and all these dudes with like a Ribera Steakhouse jacket, you know, with the logo on it.
That's fresh.
There's some great writing about this place because what happened, I guess, in the 70s, Americans, you know, they're overseas, they just want a steak, and it was kind of a novelty then, so it was very expensive. And I think it's Terry Funk, Stan Hansen, in one of these oral histories, cites Bruiser Brody as finding this place, but it was like this affordable place, and the owner is very friendly to wrestlers. So there's at this point like 40-year history of this steakhouse, and the pictures that I saw, it's just all wrestler paraphernalia around it. It's this kind of small little place, but decades of pro wrestling history there, and it's virtually everybody. You know, if you've heard of this wrestler, they're probably in there somewhere.
Oh,
so,
I'm going.
Definitely check that out. It seems like a pretty cool wrestling bit of history.
I'm going, man. I've received a lot of feedback from people who know that I'm going out there to Japan. I'm going to be out there for like a month, man, October 7th through November 4th. So if you have any insight or suggestion like Jim just described, please let me know. I'm going to do everything I can. One of the discoveries I made this past week from a few people, actually, they said that it's really frowned upon to be like filming in stores and places like that, and they said that one person said that, especially if it's like a foreigner, they think that it's like you're trying to film up girls' skirts. You know, like you're a pervert or some shit like that, man. So like, unfortunately, I don't think I'm gonna be able to do that. But I'm gonna be out there. There's gonna be a translator who I'm gonna be rocking with a little bit, and it's a translator. It's the reverse end. It's not like Ryan Holdenberg or Zach Davidson. It's a Japanese guy who translates stuff for like who translates Spider-Man comics for the Japanese market. So he's going to be able to get me into a couple of places, maybe talk to that shop owner or two, so that like we get some necessary approvals. But I want to show off some of that shit. The hope is to produce a lot of material for the channel and even upload it then and there, basically. That's only contingent on if I have like good internet. One of the things they tell you, and I wonder if you had this when you were there, because you were there for like 10 days. Did you have a pocket Wi-Fi?
I did not.
Do you know about this phenomenon?
Yeah, I did see those. I had no trouble with being connected.
There's connected, and then there's uploading 8
That's
gigabytes
true. Yeah,
of video.
for sure. I was not uploading anything of that scale.
Right, yeah. So like, I guess what I'm saying is, I hope that the pocket internet thing, pocket Wi-Fi, can handle, uploading large amounts over time or whatever. And if that's the case, it's a bet, like I'm going to get cool footage because you can't be outside every moment. You got to go home at night at some point. And boy, those hotels are real small.
They are small.
Did you were there with your wife? Were you guys still in a real tiny space? Because even the two-player, even the two people hotel rooms, man, they seem pretty tiny.
Yeah, it's small. I don't know. I'm trying to think if it'd be comparable to New York City or somewhere, where space is pretty tight. But I wonder how, like, Andre the Giant, again, thinking of wrestlers on the road there, not just him, like any big guy would be struggling.
And speaking of steak, man, A5 Wagyu, I'm on the hunt for some of that, man. I'm putting some money aside for to have like one epic Kobe beef Wagyu A5, like the best steak you could get. Like I'm putting money away so I could get it once.
Yeah,
while I'm out there, man. So if you know a good spot in Tokyo, I'm a little bit of a bitch to like go too far out into the rural settings and shit, just because I'm there by myself. Like the translator dude is Tokyo bound. He's a busy guy, so it's like I'm not gonna be able to like take him to take me to check out the whole island. So I'm a little nervous and want to be in a place where I can count on there being more English speaking people than not, But if there's a place in Tokyo that has that good shit, you gotta let me know, man, because I gotta try that out, man. I've been watching this Broad in Japan YouTube series, man, and that's how I learned that A5 Wagyu. And we don't have steak that looks like that. We don't have meat that looks like that. It's like, what are we doing wrong? What are we doing with what are we ingesting here, man?
Yeah, I don't know if you want to go down that road or not. There's plenty of documentaries on that subject too.
Jeez, man.
We should hit a couple of our recent shows and some stuff that's upcoming. We're returning to Wizard. Year 3 will be the next show that we post. But we started with Hero Illustrated #1 last week. So that is up now and live, and we've gotten a great response to that. I think if you're a fan of the Wizard shows, you probably remember Hero Illustrated. And fun to revisit that. I think I would stick to Wizards. Back then I did. I bought more Wizards than Hero Illustrated, but it was really fun to kind of look at what other companies were doing. And the response has been good. So if you haven't checked that out yet, that's one to give a look to. And we just posted an episode on computer comics, which would be like Shatter, Iron Man Crash, and Dominatrix, with a little nod to another computer cartoonist I like, Uno Morales. So a little bit of a different look at some comics that are maybe novelty gimmick type comics, but still occupy a place in my heart. And pretty good response to that video as well. So I think a lot of people know those comics, especially Shatter was a pretty big hit when it came out and definitely looked different than everything else on the stands. Before, then, and since. Like, no other comics look like that. So those are some of our recent and upcoming shows not to be missed.
Yeah, be on the lookout for the Wizard 25 episode. It's going to come out, hopefully, Sunday night, man. Kayfabers who are out there in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, just nudge us, just elbow us, man, and remind us to like hop on our phone real quick and make that shit live. Because usually we have a little redundancy. If you're someplace, I'm here, and if I'm someplace, like, you know, it's up to you to do it. But we're both gonna be indulging in the most bougie seafood dinners on the
We
regular.
may be in a seafood coma at that point.
Truthfully, so hopefully we put it out there. If not, it'll definitely be out Monday. But that's the plan.
Yeah, and it's fun. We've been stockpiling the Wizard episodes. It's been fun getting back into that. One comment that came up from a Kayfaber this past week was, when does the speculation, that bubble, when does it actually end? Is there a specific date or event or moment? And it's hard to cite that stuff exactly, but it did make me start thinking about it, because we're in the year of Wizard where it is like, there are signs that things are going wrong, but the expansion is just huge with universes and publishers and creator-owned lines. It's really a fun time to look back on, but there are signs of that pending implosion.
Yeah.
One of them is Turok Dinosaur Hunter #1 had returnables, and we've read a little bit about those coming back, being sent back to the distributors, which is definitely not a good sign. Followed by 8 months later, Ninjak orders are a quarter of what Turok was. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly what happens. The big one, I think, is whenever Marvel goes with Heroes World, the distributor, they buy this distribution company and they pull all their comics from like Diamond and Capital City and all these different distributors, and they decide they're going to distribute their own books. That's kind of a cataclysmic moment in 90s comics and distributor history. For one thing, the immediate thing that happens is 30 to 40% of these distributors' revenue is gone when Marvel pulls out.
Yeah.
While they're still staffed and built for this revenue that's not there anymore, and it kind of sends comics into a downward spiral. And that's probably, if I were going to point to a moment when things go south, that's the big one I think of so far. So, you know, these are things that we're getting into in this year 3 of Wizard, and it's pretty exciting, man. I'm having fun going through these.
I am too, man. It was when I was like knee deep into the into comics. With this Wizard 25 was the earliest issue of Wizard I had myself. So like I totally loved going through that thing. And you and I got to get out of here right now and talk about and record the Wizard 30 episode, which has prominently featured in the news item front page.
Yes.
Stephen Platt goes to Image.
Big news, big news.
Let's go get to it, man.
Couple plugs on our way out of here. Always, you can find our spread shop. Right now we have a 15% off if you use the code SUMMERLOVIN. You can get our merch there. And also Street Angel, Deadliest Girl Alive, coming out in October from Image Comics. It is, pre-orders are due now in comic shops, so please let your comic shop owner know about this. It's 240 pages for $20. It is the perfect entry point into Street Angel.
Like, subscribe, and follow the channel. Hit the bell icon. We'll let you know whenever we have new videos available. Jimmy, give them the marching orders, man.
Read more comics.